Let me tell you something about our next guest. It was way back probably, 1989, 1988? I was invited to a party, not a party, a reception, at a physician's house here in Tampa to introduce somebody who is starting a new Christian organization. And I don't know if our next guest remembers that night, but he looks young today. He was really young looking back then. But Dr. Ralph Reed was here in Tampa kicking off and looking for pre-supporters for the Christian Coalition. And that was the night in a living room right here in Tampa was the first time I met Dr. Reed. And of course, you know, he was the founder of the Christian Coalition, and you know the effectiveness they have been for many years. He is also the executive director, he actually started the founder of the Faith and Freedom Coalition that he's going to be talking about tonight. He's going to tell you about a special opportunity tomorrow morning that you can get involved and you can get started. And also I want to tell you, I can't forget, May 1995, cover of Time magazine under the title of The Right Hand of God, Ralph Reed, the Christian Coalition. And today, he also has Century Strategies, and it's a public relations firm that's helping Fortune 500 companies. But let me tell you, Ralph's got a plan. Ralph's got something he wants to tell you. Let's give a warm Tampa Bay welcome to Dr. Ralph Reed.
How y'all doing? Are you ready to send another message to Washington, D.C. in 2012? Good. You know, I am so thrilled to be back in the Tampa Bay area. I am so excited about what you have accomplished for this country, and I'll tell you why. Because in early 2009, when Barack Obama's job approval was 72% in the polls, when Newsweek magazine, which has subsequently gone bankrupt, by the way, put on its cover the cover story that was headlined, "We are all socialists now." And when the media and the cognoscenti and the pundits were fainting and swooning over the age of Obama, and when people were writing the premature obituary of conservative values and principles, there was one group of people who stood up in season and out of season and stood in the gap and lifted high a banner of bold colors and not pale pastels, and it was the Tea Party movement. And rising from the bottom up, from the precincts all the way to Washington, D.C., where over 1 million people gathered at the 9/12 rally. I'm sure a number of you were there. This was something that bubbled up spontaneously with housewives and citizen activists and taxpayers and small businessmen and women organizing at kitchen tables, initially on Facebook and other social networking sites, saying, if you want to take a stand to save the American dream, then you need to stand up right now. And they poured into courthouses and state capitals from one end of this country to the other, and it culminated in November of 2010 in the biggest landslide in an off-year election in over a century. We saw a gain of 62 House seats, 6 U.S. Senate seats, over 700 state legislative seats, 20 state legislative chambers, numerous governors, untold numbers of locally elected officials, and in Washington, D.C., we replaced Nancy Pelosi with Speaker John Boehner. We replaced, in Wisconsin, big spending liberals with Governor Scott Walker, who is standing up for taxpayers and fighting to balance the budget. In Ohio, which was a state where we got slaughtered by the Obama forces in 2008, a state that had gradually turned red to blue, that they said we could never win in again. We replaced the big spending, tax increasing, failed Governor Ted Strickland with pro-conservative champion John Kasich, who's doing a great job. And here in Florida, we replaced Charlie Crist with Rick Scott, and I think that was a pretty darn good trade. And while you were at it, when everybody was writing checks to Charlie Crist, when he had $9 million to Marco Rubio's $300,000, you got behind Marco Rubio, and he's been catapulted to the national stage where he's making a huge difference. And I can tell you that what you have accomplished in a year and a half is unlike anything I've seen in organizing at the grassroots for over 30 years. On election night 2010, the Faith and Freedom Coalition, which I serve as chairman of, commissioned an election night survey by Public Opinion Strategies, one of the most respected polling firms in the country. And they found on election night 2010 that 27% of all the voters whose shadow darkened the threshold of a voting booth in America self-identified as members of the Tea Party movement. 27%. That's more than 1 out of every 4 voters saying they were a member of a movement that didn't even exist 2 years earlier. And those voters voted 92 to 8% Republican. And they are the reason why we have changed the conversation in Washington, D.C. from how much we're going to spend to how much we're going to cut. And we're not going to stop cutting until we relimit government and balance the federal budget once again. And that's just the beginning. Let me tell you what else we're going to do. We're going to repeal Obamacare and leave it on the ash heap of history where it belongs. So my message today is really twofold. Number one, it's a message of profound gratitude. I thank you for the fact that you were willing, as God-fearing, tax-paying Americans, to take time away from your families and your hobbies and your lives and your businesses to help save America. But my second message is a challenge. And my challenge to you as your friend is to tell you that your job is not done. In fact, not only is our job not done, but frankly, the hardest part is ahead of us. I've seen this movie before. I was at the Christian Coalition in 1994 when we elected the first Republican House and Senate to control both sides of the Capitol in 40 years. And a lot of people thought on election night 1994 that Bill Clinton was done. Well, he wasn't done. He got reelected 2 years later by a landslide. And so you have to remember that Barack Obama is going to have $1 billion, MoveOn.org, George Soros, the labor unions, the radical left, every special interest group in the country in his back pocket, and he's going to have Air Force One and all the power of the presidency. So we're going to have to work harder than we've ever worked and pray more than we've ever prayed and not rest and not stop until Harry Reid has been replaced by Mitch McConnell as the leader in the United States Senate. And we will not rest until a moving van pulls up in front of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to take Barack Obama back to Chicago where he belongs. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but they've been taking your name in vain. The other day, I was watching Matt Lauer interview Chuck Schumer. Why I was watching that, I do not know. It must have been the one television set at the Reed household that is not tuned to Fox News. And Matt Lauer called you all extremists. This wasn't Chuck Schumer. This was the so-called journalist. And you've been called evil, and you've been compared to Nazis, and you've been smeared. Well, I've got a message for the people who call you names and attack you and call you everything in the book. And it's real simple. Our right to petition our government, our right to exercise our First Amendment rights of free speech were purchased by the blood of patriots who paid the ultimate price that we might be free, and we will not be intimidated, we will not be silent, and we are not going away until we take America back and preserve it for future generations. Now, I want you to be able to hear in just a minute from Marco Rubio, who's become a dear friend and who I truly believe is one of the finest public servants in America today in either political party. And I thank you for sending him to Washington. But I want to close today by quoting a man who I believe is truly the best friend this country has ever had, Winston Churchill. You know, Winston Churchill's mother was an American, and he loved this country. And he believed during World War II, during Great Britain's darkest hour, during the blitzkrieg that swept across Central and Western Europe, conquered France, the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia, Poland, they all fell like dominoes. He believed the only hope to save Western civilization was the nation that was the beacon of light and freedom to the entire world. And that was America. And he once said, the American people always do the right thing after they have exhausted every other possibility. He knew us pretty well. And over the last 30 or 40 years, we've exhausted every other possibility. We tried the counterculture. We tried if it feels good, do it. We tried the sexual revolution. We tried material acquisitiveness and keeping up with the Joneses. And what we found was that there was no seeking of pleasure, whether it was physical or monetary or financial, that could replace the one thing that makes America great. And that is a virtuous citizenry animated by faith in God and by a desire to help their friend and their neighbor in need, not because government told them to, but because it lived in their heart as the right thing to do. That's what made America great. And today, that greatness that has caused people to cross oceans and crawl across broken glass and risk death in order to come here and enjoy the freedoms that we all too often take for granted, today is in peril, and it hangs by a thread. And it is our job, my friends, to preserve that hope and that dream so that it is preserved for posterity and is there for all future generations. Let's get to work and finish what we started. Thank you all very much. God bless you. God bless the state of Florida and the United States.